Hello, Black Eagles fans. As you probably have heard by now, Giovanni van Bronckhorst is the new Beşiktaş coach, and I'm here live now, well, on delay or live or whatever, to tell you a little bit more about my first reactions on it. But I have a very special guest with me, somebody who actually supports the Glasgow Rangers and knows Turkish football quite well himself as well, as he's also a big Ankaragücü fan. You may know him from Twitter as Ankaragücü İskoçya. And joining me live now is Nadeem Raja, live from Glasgow, right, Nadeem?
Yeah, just outside of Glasgow, mate. So about half an hour in a place called Motherwell, but not far away. So big fan of Rangers is my first love, obviously, and for my sins, a long story, but I chose to start following Ankaragücü back in 2009, and it's been a bit of a circus and a roller coaster along.
I can't imagine Turkish football, and then especially if you're not supporting one of the bigger clubs, but like Ankaragücü, and you have to go through all the woes of their up and downfall, so to speak. So you were already a fan then when they had their big 100-year anniversary and brought in all those big names, and then obviously thereafter the downfall, unfortunately, for Ankaragücü, and now again this season with dropping down to the Birinci Lig.
And it's the same story. They've got a great. I know that we've got a history. Some fans are crazy, and we got a bit of a bad name in that sense of things. But we've got a loyal, big fan base. But it's the same story: politics, the poor management. I mean, we could spend hours speaking about Ankaragücü and Turkish football, but you guys know, anybody that follows Turkish football, especially Anatolian clubs, what it's like, and it's mostly been lows. Let's just put it that way, following Ankaragücü.
Yeah, for sure. How's it been following Rangers in recent years? That's also been with up and downs, I imagine.
You know, I'm 41-year-old, so I grew up during the good times, following Rangers through 9 in a row, consistently qualifying for the European Cup, as we called it at that time, Champions League. But yeah, actually, coincidentally, since following Ankaragücü, it's been pretty much the same at Rangers, with a lot of kind of things going on off the field. Obviously, we were demoted into the bottom tier of Scottish football. And since we've come back, we've only had one title, league title since then, and like a Scottish a League Cup, and it's been pretty tough following Rangers and Ankaragücü at the same time. To be with you.
Yeah, I can imagine, and of course that title came under Giovanni van Bronckhorst's predecessor, Steven Gerrard, who's now coaching in Saudi, Al Ettifaq, I believe. So, obviously... Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think that's probably a good place to start to give you an idea of Van Bronckhorst's time at Rangers and what he was coming into when he took over, and because like the Rangers support, they'll be pretty split if you ask their opinion on Van Bronckhorst. You'll have some fans that they will maybe speak quite positively, including myself, about Van Bronckhorst, and then you'll get other fans that think he was a disaster, which, to be honest with you, there's a lot went on off the field that the bigger problems that led to Van Bronckhorst leaving Rangers. So obviously Rangers, without getting into the whole history, like most people that follow football will know that some of the issues that they had off the field, going into the lower leagues, coming back up. And I think as a fan, just the name Rangers, you always expect, like Celtic had obviously won everything. They were qualifying for the Champions League. They had no competition, so they were getting that extra every year. They were getting the Champions League money.
They built up a massive piggy bank, basically. It's very difficult to compete with that.
Exactly, but the funny thing is, when Rangers come back into the SPL under Mark Warburton, we thought we were going to win the league. We expected to win the league, and that's part of the mentality as a Rangers fan, is that it doesn't matter how shit your team is.
That's fans in general, right? Like we just came off of a season with 46 points behind the champion, and we're already thinking, oh, we're going to be champions this year. It's the exact same thing, really.
And that's why like Beşiktaş, Galatasaray and Fenerbahçe are very similar clubs, because you guys just always expect success. So anyway, Steven Gerrard came in. It was his third season where he won the SPL, and that was during the COVID season where there wasn't any fans. But even without the fans being there, that was a tremendous season in terms of the team's performance in the league, and we've done well in the Europa League as well. Steven Gerrard's teams in the Europa League in general played some good football and had some great results. But when Gerrard won the league, he expected to be backed financially. But obviously, when you win the league, the next step is to go and try and qualify for the Champions League. Long story, he brought in a couple of free transfers in Fashion Sakala and John Lundstrom, and spent a small amount of money in Juninho Bacuna from Huddersfield in England. So the expectations is spending big money to go and kind of qualify, or at least make an attempt to qualify for the Champions League. Steven Gerrard's team then went into the qualifying rounds, and we failed to beat a team that were down to 10 men. The Swedish team Malmo, they knocked us out into Europa League. The league then got off to a pretty poor start, and Rangers fans will basically say, oh, he left when he was a couple of points clear of Celtic. But
that's what I'm hearing from our mutual friends, Kartal and Özcan. They're basically hitting that home. Oh, he gave away a 4-point lead. He took over Gerrard's team, and Gerrard's team was great, and he took them over, and everything went to shit. But as I'm hearing from you now, it was already going down the hill. Yeah.
So there was Gerrard's later come out and said that he expected to be backed by the board. The players that he brought in weren't what he expected to take Rangers to the next level. And also, you need to bear in mind, these players that had been with Rangers, had a lot of them had been there for 3-4 years. So the motivation, those players start to go. So you really need to freshen things up.
The guys who joined with the idea of Rangers as a stepping stone to the Premier League or something, they were already checked out. And then, a guy like John Lundstrom now heading to Trabzonspor, just to give you an idea, how his career is going.
And the other thing as well is, although Gerrard's team were a couple of points clear of Celtic had their worst start in history under Ange Postecoglou, because they had a massive turnover. They built a whole new team, and it was a really poor start. So Gerrard's result, there was a lot of draws in there. But anyway, he obviously left to go to Aston Villa. Van Bronckhorst came in. Van Bronckhorst's points average and Steven Gerrard's points average, Van Bronckhorst was a little bit higher, but there wasn't really much of a difference in terms of domestic results. But where Van Bronckhorst really started to add a bit of value, and probably the most exciting football that I've watched for a Rangers team, was in that European campaign going to Europe. I've seen Rangers go to a final in the past, but there was a lot of draws and going to penalties and things like that.
Yeah, 2002, I think, right? Or what was it?
Yeah, that's right. And the road
UEFA Cup.
Manchester. But this team, we were playing against teams like Leipzig, Dortmund, and scoring 3-4 goals. Really, tactically, Van Bronckhorst in Europe, really, that's where he kind of came into life. Because teams opened up against Rangers, there wasn't this 10 men behind the ball, and that's where he's admitted himself that through his coach,
Van Gastel.
No, it wasn't. Van Gastel never came. It was young guy from the Ajax. He came as his assistant, and they basically said that they did struggle a little bit in the Scottish League in terms of breaking teams down. But so if we talk about Europe first, then I'll come on to the SPL, because I think it's important to kind of break that down, because the way that the team played in those two competitions was like the polar opposite. In Europe, it was attractive football. We used a lot. I don't know if you probably will have seen a lot, but Calvin Bassey, he played as a left centre.
Yeah, he went to Ajax.
Yeah, that's right, and playing with Fulham in the Premier League. So he had a really, he was a key player for Rangers. He almost became like an attacking centre back. So there was a lot of power in the team. Like Joe Aribo, Ryan Kent was on form at that point as well. Alfredo Morelos was at that point playing well under Van Bronckhorst, and James Tavernier was like top scorer in the Europa League. So there was a lot of players on their game. As I said, the European campaign was excellent. Like obviously getting to the final and losing, and that kind of style was disappointing. But the big thing is again was getting into the January transfer window, and you're doing well in Europe. You're still in the chance we winning the league at that point as well. And Rangers went out and brought in Aaron Ramsey and Amad Diallo, two loan players that just didn't make any impact at all. The kind of way that Van Bronckhorst obviously kind of wanted to play, but no, it was actually the Amad Diallo and in fact that was that transfer window. But it was the big thing with Van Bronckhorst was the league form. That's where it kind of really. That's where he lost his job, and a lot of it wasn't. Some of it was his fault, and they'll take responsibility for that. And I can come on to a couple of things a wee bit later on. But the majority of the blame, I would say, lay with the Rangers board and the recruitment team. Ross Wilson been able to refreshen the team and not being able to sign the players that he wanted either.
Yeah, I've seen you heckle the Rangers for the failure in recruitment over the last year or two, and you've been one of the Rangers fans that have been more supportive of Van Bronckhorst's struggles. But for Beşiktaş fans who are kind of worried about the reputation that Van Bronckhorst has, because one of the reputations he has is that he plays more pragmatically. At Feyenoord, he was known to play a little bit more pragmatic football. How would you describe the type of football that Van Bronckhorst strives to play, and what, in effect, he is able to translate to the pitch?
I think there's elements of truth in that, but if you look at the European style of football that Van Bronckhorst played against teams that opened up and other teams that attacked, the football was great. I don't think any Rangers fan that says that they weren't entertained with Van Bronckhorst's European teams telling lies, because the stadium, the amount of people that speak about the atmosphere said that they've never experienced an atmosphere at Ibrox for those Leipzig and Dortmund games. And as I said, like there was a few games where it was kind of you're having to come back for kind of a goal down, or as I said, like going to Borussia Dortmund and what I can't remember.
That was 21-22, by the way, right? 2021, 2022.
2000.
So that would have been the Dortmund team that Beşiktaş faced in the Champions League as well, who had Haaland and Bellingham and an amazing team, really.
Yeah, Bellingham played. Haaland was injured for the game. The games against Rangers, which was pretty fortunate. But Bellingham played in those teams, and Akanji. I remember the Man City player Akanji. Where I would say that the pragmatic style of football comes in, and I'm not really kind of when it comes to this kind of tactical. People talk about the horseshoe. That was apparently Van Bronckhorst's kind of philosophy. Was looking at this kind of horseshoe, they call it. Some of the followers on Twitter, they'll be able to kind of talk you through how that works. But in terms of the Scottish League, it was a bit. The style wasn't as kind of fluid. It wasn't as exciting. But I mean, even under Clement, under Beale, even in times under Gerrard, that happens as well. Just Scottish football in general. Teams come to Ibrox, they play a low block, they play 10 men behind the ball, and it can be difficult to. Of
course. Yeah, if you can't find the opening goal early enough, then it's gonna be tough because they're just gonna turtle more and more. It's
So you
need the individual quality of the players to be able to unlock that.
That's exactly what Rangers needed. So the guys like Joe Aribo, Yanis Hadji, Ryan Kent, they could produce a bit of magic. and there was flashes of that in his first season, but when it came to the second season, obviously again we'd finished running up to Celtic, we'd got to the Europa League finals. The Rangers board came out and said that obviously kind of money that we'd made for the Europa League final was pretty decent money, so everybody's expecting us to go and
invest
decent players to help us again get into the Champions League. But we went out, and the players that we signed was Ben Davies from Liverpool. Liverpool signed him for Preston. He'd never played a single game, so we spent about $3.5 million for him. We signed Ridvan from obviously you guys,
and he's been injured a lot.
Yeah, constantly injured.
Quality when he plays, but
yeah, I mean, he's a great. Come on to that in a wee second. And then Tom Lawrence, we signed him from Derby, and again it's been injured. So he lost Calvin Bassey and Joe Aribo, who are two really powerful key players to that team. You replaced Calvin Bassey with Davies, who Davies is a big, soft, slow defender. Ridvan's a really small,
nimble,
left back. So you replaced Bassey with those two, and it was just like completely different type of players. And then you're replacing Joe Aribo with Tom Lawrence. Tom Lawrence just has been constantly injured. And then you guys like Morelos and Kent, who had kind of started to check out because they were wanting to move to kind of, understandably, the Scottish League's not the most exciting league to play in. But if Van Bronckhorst is going into a new season with guys that have checked out, plus not really spending decent money on the areas of the team that was needed, then you're going to play against is it USG, the Belgian team?
Yeah, Union Saint-Gilloise, yeah.
We played against them with a dodgy kind of first leg result, but we went over there, got a really good result, qualified for the next round and get PSV Eindhoven. So you're already thinking, we're up against PSV. But Van Bronckhorst again found a way in Europe, beat PSV, and this is where it started to go wrong. So we qualified for the Champions League. Van Bronckhorst has done an interview saying,
I think I was there actually for the home game. I think I went to that game.
Well, Van Bronckhorst was expecting, because we'd qualified, 2 or 3 big name signings to go and try and compete, at least for that Europa League place. We signed nobody. Like, we qualified for the Champions League and didn't sign a single player. We were then up against Liverpool, Napoli and Ajax. 2 of the games at Ibrox, we were playing really well against Napoli and Liverpool. Napoli, we ended up with a red card, went into 10 men, and then Napoli went on and won the game. The game against Liverpool, we Connor Goldson got an injury and had to be replaced, and it ended up being Davis and young Leon King at centre half. Liverpool then tore us apart. And then fans started, because we just were, the gulf in quality between us and those 3 teams was massive. And we're starting to get them up, and I'm like, we need to be realistic here. Like, look at this Rangers team. We've got Scott Arfield, Stephen Davis, guys that are well past their best playing in these matches. But then the next thing came, like, we had the worst injury record that you could. I mean, Van Bronckhorst's injury.
We had a pretty bad injury record that season too.
Yeah,
in the Champions League, I think in the game against Dortmund or Ajax or something, we played like 10 bench players essentially.
Yeah. It was similar to Rangers. I mean, some of the guys from the academy were having to step up, and those boys just weren't ready. But the big thing for me, so if you look at Van Bronckhorst's side, I don't know if this is true, but apparently in the summer the training was more focused in and around ball work as opposed to fitness.
Yeah.
So the team didn't look as fit as they looked the season before. So that's one thing that you can potentially look at if it is true. But again, these are things that it's gospel. You don't know if
I believe. I mean, obviously, I don't know if you're aware, but like, he didn't take the job in January because he couldn't get his assistant Van Gastel. because he was coaching NAC Breda and actually just won promotion to the Eredivisie with that team. But he's actually joining him now. And one of the reasons that he didn't want to join in January, because everything was agreed, it was just down to getting his assistant. And the deal broke down over that. And apparently one of the reasons for that was that he didn't want to because he learned from his mistake, I guess you could say. He didn't have Van Gastel at the Rangers. I don't know exactly what aspect, but I think I'm not 100% sure. I believe I heard something about that Van Gastel was mainly responsible for physical training or something. I don't know. It's somebody told me at some point like 6 months ago. So
that would make sense because as I said, that is about the only thing in terms of criticism that I could. Again, that's not me giving them criticism, but in terms of people that have aimed at him, and if that's true, in the Scottish League, you need to play at a high intensity. Your team needs to be super fit, regardless of how much talent you've got.
It might have been defensive organisation, actually, because now that I think about it, I think Van Gastel is kind of known to be a very defensive coach.
That is another thing, is the zonal marking in corners. That was like that. Some of the goals that we were conceding, and again, you could say like we did have injuries, but regardless of that, some of the zonal marking was obviously becoming a bit of an issue. We were conceding quite a few, too much goals. But as I said, like for me, that you need to look at the bigger picture. It's like the team that he inherited was a decent team, but they came to that point where too many players were there for too long, like your Moreloses, your Kents.
Morelos had been there for a very long time at that point, I think, right? Where did he end up going?
He's in Brazil with Santos.
But he seemed to struggle with his weight a little bit, like me.
Yeah. So I know some people that are connected to people at Rangers, and the stories that I've heard is that his attitude and behaviour off the pitch in the last 12 months in particular was really poor. Steven Gerrard, probably the most successful manager in terms of how he managed them. But by the time Van Bronckhorst had got him, he had already checked it, and it was time for him to move on. But again, it's an example. The recruitment under Ross Wilson, Van Bronckhorst wanted to sign Matson, the boy that's at left back for Dortmund, a guy called Doeke, who's at Union Berlin, and a few other Dutch players who are quality players, and he ended up just with these I like Ridvan, but unfortunately for Ridvan, he's just always injured.
Yeah, exactly. Although he did play a decent amount of matches the last 6 months, and it's very surprising to me that he didn't get called up to the national team, because if you look at the national team roster, there's not a single proper left back there other than Verdi, and he's right-footed.
I know. I think it's probably because he picked up another injury, and when he was in you guys played a friendly, and he picked up an injury while he was international duty for Turkey.
Yeah.
And back to Rangers and missed about another 5 or 6 games. So he only played he only started one game at the last 6 or 7 games.
I think he played in the cup final, didn't he?
Yeah, but he took injections to play in that match. He's usually up and down that wing, but he literally just kind of stayed in his own half the full game. Mate, we can pick this up for maybe a second half, but I need to jump on this client call in literally about 3 minutes. Is there anything else that...
No, thank you. That's great. So maybe just a quick recap. So what would you say overall at this time at Rangers? What would you say to the people that are a little bit wary of whether or not he is capable of taking the Beşiktaş job? Because what I'm hearing from you is that a lot of the problems were more fundamental from the club, bad recruitment. He didn't have much say in the recruitment, I'm getting from what you're saying as well.
Yeah. So the positives that Beşiktaş fans can look at is you guys have got more money to spend, which allows you to pay more salary.
We'll see about that.
Well, you spending £12 million on a player, for example. We we'd spend 12 million on about 3 or 4 players. So I think
that's usually how we do it as well. Honestly, that's very uncharacteristic for us. But yeah, we did spend 22 million euros in January on 2 quality players. Yeah.
I think the type of player that he's able to bring in, also the Turkish league, regardless if it's the Istanbul teams, clubs, even the smaller teams don't put 10 men behind the ball the way that Scottish teams do. Some of them, I mean, like there may be a couple of games where you'll come up against that, but it was literally every week at Ibrox. But I think in terms of, he's a really lovely guy. I think people like him. He's got a lot of integrity. Tactically, as I said, I think he can change games when needed as well. He'll probably look to sign young players that he can develop and coach. But no, I think he needs time though. That's the other thing. The only thing I worry about is like Turkish football in general. Managers don't always get a lot of time, and obviously Galatasaray and Fenerbahce are both really good sides now. So it's the big thing for Van Bronckhorst. He's not coming into Turkey where he's up against crap Galatasaray or crap Fenerbahce teams. He's up against 2 really good sides. So it's, if things kind of start, if he falls maybe like 6 points behind, is the pressure going to go on him and the board? Like, I think he's going to need a couple of transfer windows to get his own team, get his own style, and just a bit of patience.
There's a lot to reform. I mean, almost the entire team needs to be overhauled. So maybe if he gets enough transfer budget, he can already do a lot of good moves this summer. But hopefully he doesn't underestimate the league, and he knows that he has to bring in some good quality players. Nadeem, I want to thank you for your time. I know you have to go.
No worries, speaking to you.
And good luck in the Scottish League this season for Rangers. And of course, good luck to Ankaragücü as well, getting back up to the Super League. Maybe we'll see you again in a year's time.
Yes, mate. I appreciate that.
All right. Bye-bye, buddy.
Cheers. Bye. Bye.
See ya. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, that'll do it for this episode. This little quick reaction of Nadeem here. Let me just quickly zoom in on my own face. So as you can see, as you heard, a lot of interesting things right there from Nadeem. Obviously, what do we have to expect? It's hard to really gauge what we can expect from Giovanni van Bronckhorst. It's an interesting move for sure, but we'll talk more about it in the coming days with Sinan and with Kartal, obviously. And I'll have some more special guests on to talk about his time at Feyenoord as well. Obviously, this is a big surprise, I think. I mean, the rumors were out there already about Giovanni van Bronckhorst, but what can we believe? What could we believe? We didn't really know. So now we will have to wait and see how things develop, but it's all going to come down to, can they build a good solid team around him? I think time is essential, as Nadeem pointed out. It's going to be very important that Van Bronckhorst is given the time, but very important in that process as well that the performance is decent. People need to see that we're evolving, that we're improving. Obviously, given how bad of a season we're coming off of, it won't be that difficult to play better than this past season, but I think the expectations of our fans, of us, is high. We want to see positive change. We want to see quality players being signed. We don't want to see Onur Bulut. We don't want to see Umut Meraş. We want to see good players, good footballers wear the jersey, and that's going to be a process, obviously, you know. It's going to be very difficult to fix all the deficiencies the team has in one transfer window. As Nadeem said, it might take a couple of windows. And whether or not he gets the time of those couple of windows, that's going to come down to how the results are going to be in the early months. If the football is looking decent, if the results are okay, we qualify for the Europa League, do well in Europe. I don't think Beşiktaş fans right now expect a championship. Obviously, depending on who comes in the summer, that might change a little bit. But I think right now, especially, we need to be patient. We need to trust the process. We need to trust Giovanni van Bronckhorst. We need to give him the time. We need to give him our support. We need to give the team our the support as well. So anyway, guys, thank you very much for watching this episode. Please hit the like button. Subscribe if you haven't yet, and hit that notification bell. And leave a comment. Let us know what you thought about this video. We will be live, I think probably tomorrow. Me, Kartal, and Sinan probably tomorrow will be going live and giving a whole round of reactions. And in the meantime, I'm working hard to get some more people on to give their thoughts on Giovanni van Bronckhorst. But until then, I'll see you on the next episode. Bye bye.